Hello and welcome to Kabash Figures. Today's video is a showcase of a Battlefront II inspired custom, the Umbara ARC Trooper. So first off, before I start, there's a couple of general philosophy I have about these customs. You might notice that I hardly weather my figures. I usually love weathering figures, but the Black Series is not like the model kits. The details are usually not sharp enough, so I see a lot of cases where by weathering it, it actually comes out just looking plain dirty. Weathering, I think, is great to give a figure some sense of realism, but when done overcooked, it could really destroy the scale or can instead communicate sloppy technique. So I also want to keep the toy as toyetic as possible, making it feel like something that is an official Hasbro release. So while some parts are inevitably going to be delicate, I don't want to be so fragile it falls apart when handling or paint rubbing off everywhere. Hopefully this concept becomes clear as the video goes along. Another thing is these are made without an airbrush because I live in a small apartment and I don't have space for a dedicated spray station. But I try to go with aerosol spray cans as much as possible and avoid hand painting. So these are the two types of spray I use for this particular instance. I try to avoid hand painting because it will make it look a bit cruddy. It might look fine to the naked eye, but cameras will inevitably pick it up. So as much as possible, I try to stick with this, the spray cans. And one of the things that really helped me to do this, to keep it, the details actually pretty sharp, is by using one of these magnifying glasses. You see a lot of modelers use them. And the trick is, if it looks good magnified, it will probably look good in camera. So, with that out of the way, while many of you might ask why the Umbara ARC Trooper, usually when people want to customize ARC Troopers, they immediately think of Fives or Echo, and I love those guys. But I think eventually I have faith that Hasbro will release those two figures in Black Series. I hope soon. And as such, I decided to go with a design that probably won't be covered in the future. And also this guy looks so badass. I mean, when I saw the Umbara Trooper, I just love the skull paint design. However, you might notice the game has a yellowish orange color, while this one is gold and black. It's partially by accident, but I like the way it looks. The scheme makes it look more like a ceremonial armor per se. So that's actually another reason why I don't want to weather this particular one. But how I came about making it gold was I originally sprayed it with, I taped it up and I sprayed it with orange. And unfortunately, this one came out to be looking more day glow than anything else. I used the wrong shade of orange. So I just became impatient, really. So I don't want to wait the next day to pick up new paint. So I have some gold paint on hand and just used it, and I'm happy with it. So this is the way it looks. So let's talk about the basis of this figure. So, and the base of this figure is actually the Perch Trooper. Here's the Perch Trooper without the gun. The body of this is actually a Perch Trooper. It started off being black, and it's black. This is great because when it's black, I don't have to spray paint the whole entire thing. I don't have to worry about the parts rubbing off, the paint's rubbing off and all such. The head actually is from a Bly figure. And why Bly? Because I have actually have managed to pick up a couple of them recently from a market in Hong Kong, and they have an excess of Bly figure. I don't know why. So I pick up a couple and use them as basis for some of my customs. And what I did was, obviously I removed the visor and actually then the body of that fly figure went into making this little sucker over here, which, as you know, it's actually from here, the Perch Trooper. So I'll showcase this in another video, but essentially if these two guys were to get married and have a baby, then you get the two brothers over here, if you know what I mean. Kind of sounds awkward, but whatever. So so let's with that covered so far, let's start with the head then. So this is actually made with a combination of resin parts I got online, and also from some spare parts I got from model kits. I made some modification to it too. I'd like to give a big shout out to Camino 3D facility on eBay for got the viewfinder, the pauldron, the ammo pouch, the chest piece, and also the backpack from it. And I'm very happy with what they put together, and so I decided to give them a shout out. For full disclosure, I did not get paid from him. I just think that the guy is a very nice guy, and I wanted to bring him some business. But anyways, so the pauldron, well actually, you know what, start with the head. Sorry about that. So with the head, right, you could see it's actually the Bly's head. I sprayed it black first with a black primer, and then the fin is actually made with the Tamiya epoxy putty. So this is what I used, and there are many videos that actually show how to use this, so I'll just skip the big story on it. But anyways, I put up an image right now. As you can see, actually it looks quite crude when I first put it on, but then later on it requires me to actually to Dremel it, file it down, sand it, and spray paint it, and it actually come out quite nice, nice and smooth. It did actually, after it cured for a day, when I was sanding it, it did come off, but I used crazy glue back, and it bonded beautifully. I never had a problem with it since. And so afterwards I taped it up, literally just taped the hell out of it. It's a very tape intensive this process. So again, these are the type of Tamiya tapes I use to help me keep things consistent. It comes in different thickness. In this case, it's a 3mm and a 1mm. I have the other measurements too. And then I just went in and just carefully used the references, and I taped the whole thing up, and hence this is what I got. And so with the pauldron actually, when it came, it looks like this, and unfortunately it was a little bit wide for this figure, I just thought. So what I did was I used a 3mm tape up front, tape in the back, just to give a very good visual guide as to making sure that I chop off the same amount of piece front and back, and also keep it straight, and then I just glue it back together, crazy glue, no problem. At one point I actually have to use a hair dryer to actually heat it up because it's a bit too curled. So what I did was I kind of flattened it, and you know, it came out okay, and it never went back, and this is perfect. So working with these resin kits is actually a lot more easier than I thought, and they're a lot more sturdy too. The viewfinder, for instance, is actually quite okay. Of course, I won't like bend it and kill it, but you know, as long as you're okay with it, you're reasonable with it, you should be okay with it. And they work okay with crazy glue. Okay, so this set, and then the next thing is actually the arm piece. The arm piece is actually a Boba Fett, comes from Boba Fett model kit. And what I did, I'm gonna put up another picture over here. What I did was, it's actually a lot bigger than I need it to be, so I have to chop it down, and again, putty the hell out of it, and then file it down, and spray paint over it, and this turned out quite okay. The holster is actually from Bly, from the Bly figure, and it's actually what I have to do is I have to use one of those plow plates, which I'll show you later. I put a strip underneath it, I glued it, then I spray painted black with black primer, and then dabbed some glue in it, and I just slipped it in there, and it came out fine. The comma is actually quite tricky. So the comma, what I did was I cut out this piece over here, right above the butt, so that when you look at it, it kind of looks like this, and you can't register that there's another piece in there. Then what I have here is a piece of leather glove. I took a little piece here just to show you, and I sacrificed this whole palm piece over here. And then what I did was I used the trace paper. Trace paper is your friend. They're great for in the process over here, because what I did here was then, this is actually not the pattern for this Umbara Trooper, but what I did here is I did my best. I measured it, and then what I did was I did my best to replicate the pattern. Then in order to get the mirror of it, I fold it over and I trace over this, and voila, you get this. And then afterwards, then you get the masking sheets, which is see-through. You tape it on there, you cut it out, you peel off, and then you put it onto a piece of cardboard, the leather, and then you spray paint it, and it's totally fine. And one thing I have to say before anything is that when you spray paint, you first do make sure you use primer. It just sticks a lot better, and in this particular case it helps a lot too, because when you do metallics, you use black color, it actually comes out, once you spray over it, it gives it an extra depth to the metal paint. So this is just kind of a little pro tip over there. Okay. What else? Then yes, I used the leather version of Crazy Glue. And remember the comma, what I said before about cutting off, leaving a little bit of the cloth from before over here. Leather bonds well to cloth. It doesn't bond well to plastics. So this is, I learned it the hard way on another figure. So in this particular case, it bonded beautifully, and hence you get this pretty tight fit over here. Right? And then yeah, and you notice that actually the front actually is supposed to have 2 ammo pouches, which I do have, but I decided not to include them because I just feel that, you know, it starts to get overloaded. I might put it on later on, but I think that this is actually fine to convey the ARC Trooper. So I decided against putting on too much stuff, because afterwards it's going to get very clumsy. The legs is probably the most intensive part in this whole entire process. One thing that bugs me the most about the original legs is if you look at the Purge Trooper, it has a really thin, really thin body, and the legs kind of just, there's this really protruding point over here. Then when the way this drapes over here is good, it just looks so bad. Look at this. I just don't like the way it looks. So what I did was I actually took a piece of tape. I use it as a guide. This is actually, it flares out. So what I did was I used a tape. I tape it over here, so the new point is actually in here. And then I just take a scalpel and I just took a whole chunk of plastic away from it, just to kind of soften that edge. And I think it's okay. I couldn't manage to sand this down and have the same amount of gloss as before. In fact, it looks kind of cruddy. But what happened is because the comma actually covers it up, it's fine. This over here, so the shin guards. I decided one of the challenges of this is that I want the details to be very, very sharp. So what I did was, instead of using just epoxy putty, I decided to use claw plates, which is essentially pieces of this particular thing from Tamiya. You could get different thicknesses of this. You could actually get other brands for this, and what it essentially is just a piece of plastic, and I cut into strips, and then I first lay it out over here and over here, and you can see an image I'm putting up right now. And the next thing I do is then I took the strips and then I kind of cover it out as best I can, and then later on I put the epoxy putty, and making sure that I still expose the edges, because when you look, when your eye picks these things up, it picks up on the edges to see whether or not it's sharp, and hence it creates that illusion. So what I did was then I took I sand down the putty and I grind it down to smooth, and then last but not least, to kind of further cover up the imperfections, then I took another strip of plow plate. I should have done it with an even thinner, an even thinner, less thick piece, but you know, it's all good. So I just wrap it around just to give it that finish, and this is fine. The backpack, finally the backpack. So what I did was this. The backpack, actually, fortunately, in the back over here, this is removable. I have a hand drill. Hand drills are great because you could really control how you want to drill your piece. With an electric drill, I get the feeling that it goes too fast and something goes awry, the whole thing just spins and flies off and stuff, and then you'll be kind of left crying. So with this, you just be able to drill these two holes over here. What I did was then I figured out a way to find out the width of those between those holes, and I drill it onto the corresponding piece on the backpack. These little stubs are actually from the model trees. I actually clipped it off, and then I glued it in here, and then what you have in the end, okay, still in one piece. See, it has to be toyetic. So there you go. Voila. So anyway, so this is pretty much my ARC Trooper. It's probably the most intensive modification I've done so far, and I hope you guys like it, because I'm actually quite okay with the way it turns out. So until next time, please comment below if you have any questions, and I hope I'll see you soon in another video.